You see this shit under my booth. I respect this more than the entire Indian education system. Every single great man, great car, great artist has taken a risk. We don't do that in India. What do you expect in a country where the only appeal of a government job is job security?
What makes a good car for you?
Soul. Soul, definitely soul. Something that you just think, wow, there's something about this thing, it's talking to me.
All still have a piece of their soul etched into every curve, every body line, every crevice, and each individual nut and bolt put on every single McLaren F1 built on this planet.
What defines a soul in a car? Is it its design? Is it its purpose? Or is it its cost of making? Well, as far as I know, a car isn't just a car when the people behind building it are sharing with passion and purpose to achieve a goal. Art on Wheels sentiment of Horacio Pagani, Carroll Shelby with the absolute American bonkerness of the first-gen Dodge Viper in the 1990s, and the Mitsubishi Rally team while making the legendary Evo Dynasty. And you can clearly feel the soul of the Evo when in the Scandi flick of Grand Tour Special, when James May crashed the Evo, Richard Hammond didn't say you have damaged it. He said that you have wounded the Evo, treating it like a beast, a soul. That is something worth keeping in mind as a car guy. Because these machines are just as much as living being to us as any other human being or an animal. In spite their flaws or shortcomings, we still love them. Or maybe because of their flaws and shortcomings, we still love them. You know why this happens? Soul. When the corporate greed and profit-driven accountants don't interfere as much with a truly dedicated and passionate group of engineers to make a car and achieving their goal, makes that inanimate object feel full of life. And that makes it truly great. It makes spectacles, makes headlines, but most of all, it creates value. For those buying it or for those who are even interested in it. Every engineer's, every designer's soul etched into every inch of the car. So what do I mean, soulless Indian car industry? Bharat, for what I used to call India, great country riddled with great problems, has become one of the top 5 economic superpowers and one of the youngest populated country in the world, with a lot of potential ahead, hopefully. Apart from that, apart from the potential, the GDP, relations, etc., our car market are the 3rd largest in the world in terms of sales, just after the United States and China. We have even surpassed Japan and Germany in this market. We have many international brands making, assembling and selling their cars in our country. And with such a big market for cars that even surpassed Japan, which made an entire category for cars known as JDM, the cars whose demands are through the roof internationally while organizing and hosting a racing series so infamous that it had international attention to their racing tracks. And who can forget the contributions of German to the car community and to the automotive world in general. BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, international car sellers whose cars are seen as a brand valued gemstone with the most infamous racing track we car guys adore, the Nürburgring. So definitely a country who surpasses Japan and Germany must have produced something more sensational, more passionate, and some car which has international demand where people are ready to throw millions for the car. Right? Oh boy, do I have to cover it. The problems, the lackings, the lot. And you can say it's bad when asking Google about the most interesting cars made in India. The AI result shows the Tata Nexon followed by other uninspired econoboxes, and most are either international brands or one so-called sports car, which I'll talk about later. If you are outside of India, you might not even recognize any of them, the Indian branded cars anyway. And of course, my fellow Indians would try to destroy me in the comment section by this point, so let me be very clear about one thing to you. Soulless doesn't mean bad. It doesn't equal to bad either. Tata Nexon is not a bad car. My uncle owns one and it is quite good. But much to say, it is soulless and uninteresting because it tries to appeal to everyone in the market. Affordability and all that. Don't at me. Its primary purpose is the affordability factor. Miles per gallon is secondary. Nothing else matters much. And when it comes to other expensive cars that has more thought put into them, like Mahindra Scorpio or the Tata Safari, those big SUVs, the thought of course being, how can we sell these cars to people who have their egos bigger than the car itself and make off-road specs so these people can take it off-road? Never. And if you're still on the defense, just like our parents defending the education system, pin that because it's relevant later on. Show me the results. Just for context, in the year 2023, Japan has exported 5.27 million vehicles, Toyota, Nissan, Honda, etc., while not considering the car assembling factories in other countries. And so, how many cars do you think were exported from India? 617,000 units, including the brands that are not even Indian. The pure Indian brands make up to 2% of the entire export market. 2% by Tata and Mahindra combined. Others are foreign brands which have branches over here. This just shows our car's international value. And you know what? Let's just ignore the boring cars made by us. Japan exports mostly good, reliable, but frankly boring cars as well. So let's talk about the interesting cars. Let's see. You know, we don't have car meets as much here. You know, that's just a fact here. But on very rare occasions, we do have car meets with interesting cars, don't we? Surely some of them must have a purebred Indian engineered sports car, a supercar. Let's see. German, Italian again, Japanese, Japanese. Oh, an Indian car. Yes, the Swift, the Suzuki Swift. Look, Danny, you were wrong. See, there is an Indian car right there doing some cool moves. Oh, you got me. Shut the fuck up. You just said Suzuki. It has the badge of Suzuki, not Maruti. People think that if the car is assembled in India like the Swift, it is Indian. It's not. It is designed in Japan, not in India. Even if there was a joint venture of Maruti and Suzuki at the time. Also, if Jaguar and Land Rover is owned by an Indian brand Tata, doesn't magically make those two companies Indian. An Indian car is truly a car which is designed in India. Major R&D budget takes place here, with minor outsource here and there. Jaguar and Land Rover would always be considered as British brands due to their origins and creations. But coming back to the point, there is no Indian car that turns up in these car meets, considering them cool enough to turn up in one in the first place. But hey, at least we made the G-Wiz, which was quite popular in the mid 2000s and it was loved by Top Gear at the time.
When I press this little button.
However, there is an Indian sports car that came very close to being an India's automotive masterpiece, the TC Avanti. Dilip Chhabria, the bloke who once designed an Aston Martin concept, I would say the most creative and well-known car designer in India. He used to modify certain cars to give them a unique and flamboyant shape, for the lack of a better word, to otherwise boring looking cars. And as he was the first person who dared to do something like this, we Indians with no standards set loved them. And as the time went by, DC company made more designs even for celebrities. His car was featured in a literal movie, Tarzan the Wonder Car. The movie was average, but that was a huge step for DC and an inspiring icon for kids. The design for me personally looks shit. I may used to like it as a kid, but now I don't. Looks bent to of course what was underneath, a Toyota MR2, which was a good car. So after making a car that was featured in a Bollywood movie, after selling his designed cars and vehicles to celebrities, Dilip Chhabria wanted to make a sports car to fill in the market as the first Indian sports car that will be recognized globally. It would show the world what Indian designed and engineered car could do and become. It would flood the demand in the market. The hole would be filled, and god damn did they fail to achieve it. I have already made 2 videos on DC Avanti back when the younger me was just so eager to talk about this car, and now here I am. Anyway, the Avanti was unveiled to the public in 2012 and it shocked everyone. Now every Indian can proudly say, we have made a sports car with our heads held high. Though it took 3 years in 2015 to make a production version, and to its defense, I have seen many people stating the design as a copy of Lamborghini and Ferrari, displaying our inferiority complex openly, that we cannot even design an original car or something. The DC Avanti might be inspired by the Italian companies, but it is still an original design, like it or not. But apart from that, it was frankly a terrible car and much less a sports car. It was powered by a 2-liter inline-4 Renault engine with a turbocharger, and if you know anything about the modern French cars, is that they are unreliable and terrible in every way, including the service experience. And it was no different in the Avanti, so it was riddled with reliability issues. It costed around 40 lakh rupees or $62,000 in 2015, which was one steep price for a car made out of materials you would find on a toilet cover. And I don't think it's a great sports car either, but in fairness, despite it having a steel block chassis construction, reviews say it handles well, so it's a fair pass in terms of sports cars. But it was such a terrible car, it couldn't even come close to Miata's fame, much less a competitor in the international market. So it got depreciated so hard to only 15 lakh rupees or $7,800, and that's gotta hurt. It's gotta hurt so bad that only 127 people dared to buy this car, and it flopped spectacularly. It was so bad that Dilip Chhabria had to commit a fraud against a comedian to get out of the situation, but ended him in a jail cell anyway. But at least the guy is worth respecting. He dared to stand out through his unique design skills and made a mark in the Indian automotive industry. He did something that 99.9% of designers, much less engineers, could not do. One thing though, Dilip Chhabria learned designing from an art college in California, which brings me to the most important point in this video: Indian education system. Oh boy, get ready once again, because you see these automotive videos made by Jason on Engineering Explained. I respect these videos more than the entire Indian education system. You see this Lego Technic chassis construction right here with a sequential gearbox. I respect this more than the entire Indian education system. You see this shit under my booth. I respect this more than the entire Indian education system. And I'm sure I'm not the only countryman who thinks like this. It's not just the system, it's the entire atmosphere that we students in here, whether as a kid or as an adult, has to suffer through day by day, year by year, till 25% of our lives have been wasted through this bullshit. Before getting any further, let me tell you that this is my logical analogy, so have an open mind with this section for me. Unlike in other countries where engineering or one of the STEM fields is well respected and you can have a great future if you had one engineering degree, India does not fare well in this sort of field. So if you are an international viewer, let me give you a brief history for the context for this video. You see, many great Indian CEOs like Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Shantanu Narayan, etc. had an engineering bachelor's and master's degree of various colleges in India, which created an image amongst the older and younger people alike. Image being, once you become an engineer, life is set, you are going to be rich, stable, healthy, and much more, among the other narrow mindsets that we had. So if you are born in India, you are considered a failure if you don't fit in the system. A boy interested in pursuing sports is laughed at, while the boy who's good at studies is respected amongst everyone. Even if you survive the brutal system, you have max 5 choices. 4 if you are being honest. Engineering, doctor, CA/MBA, civil services. If you want to be ridiculed to all hell for the entirety of your life, arts is what you choose. Forget about your career if you want to be a musician, photographer, or for us relevant people, even a racing driver, for example. And so, as we saw these successful CEOs with engineering degrees, we associated engineering with wealth and success. And so, people who didn't even know what to pursue in life or straight up not interested in the concept of engineering were pushed into becoming an engineer. And what we are interested in, more specifically mechanical engineering, for the time in 1990s and the 2000s, we created a massive pile of mechanical engineers in the automotive sector who were never interested in the concept of engineering. Well, majority of them anyway. Even when movies like 3 Idiots, which criticized the concept of basically students turning into robots that just do what they are told or hang themselves if they don't, it encouraged people to follow their core passion. And despite the movie being a blockbuster hit and critically acclaimed, as people watch this movie even to this day after 15 years, yet still no change is done to the rotten core system that is approximately 200 years old. And if you want to see what it's like to be an engineer in India, you can watch a simple animation made by FMF. And simple, uninspired, uninterested engineers got to work, and little by little automotive sector were filled with these people who were just working as a follower, just doing things that they are told to do, and passionate people with ambitious ideas were pushed aside because it was risky. It is risky and a money sink to make an interesting car, which has more thought put into it. Motorsports wasn't even considered as sport at the time, so an Indian car manufacturer would not even think about going to international races like Le Mans or F1 like Renault or Honda did. Tata was even planning on producing a sports car with the Tamo, but it was cancelled because again, it was too risky. And if you say, what do I know about making a car which is worth that risk? You were never in that position, Danny. Maybe, yes, maybe I was not. But someone was. Some company was. You know how the Godzilla was born? It was born out of a risk. A risk that Nissan took. When Nissan was a tire company in 1985 or the mid 1980s in general, their leader, Yutaka Kume, could have taken the easy route, cutting costs and making mass appeal cars and quit expensive programs like racing. But he knew that it was just a short-term solution. He knew their customers wanted one thing: victory. They wanted some of that victory that the car they drive gives them, and pushing the engineers got them the R32 Skyline, which skyrocketed their sales because it didn't lose. It dominated and nearly destroyed an entire racing series. And just look at the GTR cars now. They have international presence and values that an average fan cannot even comprehend to afford. The McLaren F1 was a huge financial risk. The Bugatti Veyron was a huge financial risk as well. Every single great man, great car, great artist has taken a risk. We don't do that in India. What do you expect in a country where the only appeal of a government job is job security? No risk, just a stable path of living in mediocrity, not pursuing greatness. Making a car that has a soul, a purpose more than just profits. I know profits are important for a company's survival, but just profits makes a company soulless in the automotive sector. And in the long term, our Indian car companies could never compete with the other international brands in international sales. Just stuck in a national car market, and that's it. And the most important thing about risk, it creates innovation. It breeds innovation through and through. Something as simple as a disc brake came from the risky world of motorsports. A rear view mirror, for God's sake, came from motorsports. But the worst outcome of all this, the most pissed off people are engineers with passion for cars. Like you and me. We love cars. We want to make so much more than just a normal everyday family car. We are inspired, ready, and on it. But either we are not accepted by the system, which makes an engineer end themselves every single hour, or the system tries and excels its best to squeeze every last bit of ambition and creativity out of you to point where you only do what you are told to do. And that's not even working out, because guess what? When a country produces 1.5 million engineers with no practical knowledge, no practical skills, much less experience, more than 80% of us are unemployable. Not unemployed. There are jobs in the market. It's just that we are not skilled enough to do it. And making an interesting, high ambitious car with soul is simply just above them. So what do skilled, knowledgeable and ambitious engineers do? They either have their sights on some interesting personal projects, like what people did on the channel Naughty Nut. People in there replicated a Shelby Cobra 427 quite well, and currently making a GT40, which is more than respectable. And I always root for them. You can show some love to them. Anyway, the skilled engineers, they just go outside. India has one of the most highest immigration rates in the world. So when a skilled engineer is suffocated here, they plan to go outside to further pursue their career, which reduces the number of useful and skilled people to make such iconic cars in India. In other words, brain drain. And unlike Japan and China, when Chinese and Japanese students have their education fulfilled by master's or the bachelor's degree, they come back to their country to serve its own country because of their patriotic mindset. We Indians don't come back. We simply settle our lives outside. One major thing though, in Indian car brands' favor, maybe they just didn't have enough time and space to expand because of the Indian government. The Indian government till 1991 liberalization policy, where before it took more than 80 licenses to set up an industry, giving a lot of power and control to government. And as corruption was rampant at that time, you needed big pockets to even develop a car. This video by Biturbo Media has explained it quite well. There wasn't much time for an Indian car brand to prosper, etc, etc. Sure, that could be a factor, but I am not just saying that only mainstream brands may do the work, but also experimental startups, because liberalization was in 1991, and if a country like Sweden, that was only known for practical and safe cars, had an entrepreneur who started his company in 1994, and we know where he is today. So that's not an excuse for us people, because there were many other startups that took place, or maybe it's the point I mentioned earlier. The people who could have done the things, that would have taken the risk, that would have started up a company in India for moving outside of the country. So who knows? So this may be the reason for the soulless Indian car industry after all. The late liberalization, when Japanese and Korean brands had their freedom in 1970s and 80s, they found their mark and pushed past the boundaries to make their brand identity international. And if our car brands were that big, there's a high chance that we could have made the interesting car that has more thought put into them. Corruption does destroy the country in the long term. Who knew? Look, the simple statement is, we have the potential to make an interesting car that is world renowned, but we cannot make low slung sports cars because roads are atrocious here, and so on and so on. Lack of racetracks, and so on and so on. And until 2024, any modifications were banned. But now, at least, they are less stringent, but limiting as well. So, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe this video is just begging one of you to make something huge. Just try and push of what you can make and learn through the process. I know I will make my own car before I hit 25 years of age, and might record the entire journey on YouTube as well. But anyway, whether through suffocation or not, whether through potential or not, whether through an Indian government or not, India has a soulless car industry, whether if we like to admit it or not.